Hello, dear students. The Cultural Studies course of Level 7, Lecture 5, Part 2 of 2, Antonio Gramsci. We are continuing the previous lecture on. Actually, this slide, discussion of cultural hegemony, has already been discussed and explained last time when we mentioned that intellectuals can be either traditional intellectuals or organic intellectuals, and that it is the organic intellectuals who can bear the burden or play the role of achieving cultural hegemony by raising the consciousness of the people. Now, I'll just move to this second slide, and you can see that in this second slide, we will just mention an example, an analysis of the Gramscian concept of the intellectual in the works of a Filipino-American author or an American-Filipino author, whichever way you want to put it. His name is Juan Jr. And the important point about this slide is that, as an example, it will help you to see that your cultural studies course, maybe it is a theoretical course. You get to know the names of a number of theoreticians, cultural critics. They have all been working since the 1940s and 50s, engaged in putting down the foundations of the discipline of cultural studies. Many of them happened to be Marxists, and maybe this is not a chance because Marxism always pays attention to culture and society and the processes of production of culture and of interpretation of culture. So it is not such a big surprise. And throughout the course, we studied a number of intellectuals. As you see, maybe you remember Hogarth and Williams, Althusser, Gramsci. Later on, we have Greenblatt and we have Frantz Fanon. So we have a number of theorists. In a sense, you can consider that cultural studies can help you as students of literature in the same manner as the course of critical theory or literary criticism. Actually, cultural studies provides you with a wealth of theories. You can use any of these in order to read or to analyze a text of literature. Personally, I have used several of these authors in my dissertations and postdoctoral research papers. I attended several dissertations, masters and PhDs in which, for example, Gramsci's concept of hegemony or Althusser's ideological state apparatus or Hogarth's popular culture versus the mass culture, whatever, this was the theoretical frame of the paper itself. So I want you, while you are studying this course, of course, you can go and read further as much as you like. You can perform your further reading. The course is just opening up windows so that you would know the direction of what to read and what to focus on. But you can go and read further, not necessarily for the exam. We are not talking about the exam. We are talking about your future benefit and how to make use of the course. You can use it, you can apply it in your research papers, graduation project, thesis, whatever, and you can think of it as any of the theories that you have been studying and that maybe you are studying right now or will study in the future under the title of literary criticism. Actually, many of these cultural critics have influenced other critics that you study in other courses. You will discover, for example, that Frantz Fanon, our cultural critic, has had a paramount importance and significance to Edward Said and to all those working on the post-colonial theory, and you can find so many examples about this. So this is just an introductory course of cultural studies, but I hope that you will get the idea that this course is not just to be memorized for the exam and then you forget about it. It is a course that has a practical application value. You can use it as a tool of analysis, as a theoretical framework or background whenever you are conducting literary analysis of a novel, a play, a short story, a poem, whatever the genre might be. Now we will go and talk a bit briefly, very briefly, about E. San Juan Jr. and his application of the Gramscian concept of the intellectual in his works. So let's talk a bit briefly, as we said, about E. San Juan Jr. He's a contemporary Filipino-American literary critic. He writes literary criticism, cultural theorist engaged with our cultural studies, political activist, and creative writer at the same time. Because you will discover that he preaches that creative writers should make use of art in order to perform a role of raising the consciousness of the people. Now, he was influenced by a number of cultural critics who came before him, notably Gramsci, Fanon, and Edward Said. Antonio Gramsci, Franz Fanon, Edward Said. Antonio Gramsci, you are familiar with, and we are discussing his lecture now. Edward Said, I am sure that you know him from your other courses. And Franz Fanon is another post-colonial theorist and cultural critic, a very important one. And you will hear a lot about him in a later lecture, in this course, a later lecture. So these are the main influences. Critics who are working with the culture and working with post-colonialism. They are the intellectual influences on the work of E. San Juan Jr. Of course, as we said, we are just taking a brief note about him. We are not going to delve into all his publications or anything, but we are just taking this brief note to show that a creative writer and a theorist at the same time makes use of this concept of the intellectual, especially the organic intellectual in third world countries. This is the concept that San Juan usually repeats in many of his works: organic intellectual in third world countries and in colonial situations sometimes. For example, there is a book, one of the books of San Juan, written in 1995, and this book has the title Hegemony and Strategies of Transgression. So you see that the term hegemony is there in the title. And in the book Hegemony and Strategies of Transgression, he describes the organic intellectual as someone who has proletarian affiliations. It means he is connected to, affiliated to, linked to, close to the proletariat, and of course the proletariat would be the peasants and the working class. It's a Marxist terminology. So this intellectual, although he himself is not a worker and is not a peasant or a farmer, but he comes usually from working class background or peasant background, what we call proletarian background, either socially or familially, like this is his family, or at least this is where his sympathies lie and his true affiliations lie. And the second thing that San Juan mentions about the organic intellectual is that this intellectual, his work and his ideas, his writings, usually he is a writer, is like the living embodiment of the aspirations of the masses. We all know that the aspirations are like the hopes and the dreams and the desires and so on. So this organic intellectual, if you listen to him or her or you read what they are saying, you feel like this is an embodiment of the aspirations, dreams, hopes, wishes of the masses. And something else that San Juan mentions about the organic intellectual, a third point, is that he uses art and other cultural products in order to raise consciousness against oppression. Of course, we mentioned before that art, different types, literature, visual arts, all types of arts, they are part of the culture and they can be used for different purposes. They can be used to spread different forms of consciousness, either to spread false consciousness or to try to raise the consciousness against the reality of exploitation. So this is just a very brief note about a contemporary author, creative writer, theorist, critic, San Juan Jr., in order just to show you as an example that Gramsci's work and the work of the other cultural critics that you studied in this course are not just for theoretical memorization, but they are for practical, analytical application when you are analyzing the literary texts your other courses study or even in your postgraduate work. Let's hope that you will remember this introductory course and try to make the best use of it in your future work. Thanks a lot and all the best of luck. Thank you.